is an extraordinarily unusual material. If we look at the periodic table, water actually should be a gas at room temperature. Water is the only material, I believe, that's known that will actually become less dense as it solidifies. So water will expand, and that one feature, that one single feature of water, is what allows for life on planet Earth. If water became more dense like any other liquid, that means ice would settle to the bottom of a lake, and that would kill all of the life in the lake, or in the ocean for that matter. So this property of water is rather magical, and it is, in fact, what allows for life on planet Earth. So we're taking two of the most unusual and magnificent materials in our world, and we're combining them. So let's go back. Let's start our journey today back at 1672. We could go further back, but let's start with Isaac Newton, one of the greatest scientists that ever lived. And the formulas that Newton created around gravitation are still used today. He was known as the preeminent scientist in his day, and he conducted experiments where his belief was that light are corpuscles, or tiny streams of particles. So it's important to keep that in mind. About the same time, we had other scientists that did experiments and said, no, light is in fact a wave. But because Newton was so famous, people at that time went with the particle theory. But here we have two different sets of experiments, one seeming to prove that light is a particle, and the other seeming to prove that light is a wave. Then we have an experiment that occurred in 1801 by Young, and this experiment is still talked about today, and people reproduce this today and are experimenting with variations of it, but it's called the double slit experiment, and what it seems to show is that light is in fact a wave. So in other words, you send a stream of photons or even single pulses of photons towards this barrier. The photons travel through one of these slits and creates an interference pattern. You have bands of light strips and then darker bands. And what that is showing is that you have waves that collide, and either the energy of the waves build upon themselves, making the darker strips, or they start to nullify themselves. They break apart, making the lighter colored strips. So this seemed to prove that light is in fact a wave. Now, another one of the greatest scientists of all time, James Clerk Maxwell, gave us 4 fundamental equations showing the relationship between electricity and magnetism. And that an electrical field will create a magnetic field, and a magnetic field will create an electrical field. So electromagnetic waves propagate through space in this fashion. And Maxwell said, well, let's calculate the speed of an electromagnetic wave, like a radio wave. And it came out that the speed of propagation is the speed of light. So Maxwell reasoned that if a radio wave travels at the speed of light, then light must be an electromagnetic wave. So as we would say during the pandemic, the science was settled, right? That was a famous thing to say during the pandemic. The science is settled. However, it wasn't settled because Einstein comes along in 1905. And of course, we think of Einstein as the theory of relativity, that you take a large mass like the Earth or the Moon, and it creates a warping of space, and that's what creates gravity. But actually, Einstein never got a Nobel Prize for that. He got the Nobel Prize for the photoelectric effect. And the photoelectric effect, Einstein said that light travels in packets called quanta. They were later renamed photons. were that you would take light of different frequencies. So you could take a red light or a blue light, shine it on a piece of metal like copper, and electrons would not come off the metal with the red light, but they would with the blue light. So keep this short. That indicates that light is a stream of particles. So you can see we get into an enormous problem here. We have one set of experiments by Young. We have the mathematical formulas by Maxwell showing that light is a wave. And now we have another set of experiments which are proving that light is a particle. So what is light? Is it a particle or a wave? And why does any of this matter? And what does this have to do with X2O? We have to wait a while. We have to wait to the 1940s. Richard Feynman, one of the most famous physicists of all time, along with three other scientists, gives us quantum electrodynamics. And to make a long story short, light is a quantum object. One way to think about this, we should not think of light as a wave, and we should not think about light as being like little balls that we throw, like a particle. Light is something very, very different. You can think of light as existing outside of space and time, and it will appear in our space and behave like a wave or behave like a particle, depending on the circumstances. Even the path of a photon is described in terms of an amplitude or a probability. So a photon can literally take any path, and when calculating the path of a photon, you take vectors, you sum all the vectors up, and then the probability is where that photon is going to go, and that actually matches up with classical physics. So this is all to say that this theory of quantum electrodynamics, it's the most accurately tested, most thoroughly tested principle in all of physics. I think it goes out to 11, 12, or 13 decimal points in accuracy. So this is all to say, sometimes people can be skeptical about LifeWave, even though we've got over 80 clinical studies now in the past 20 years. We can frame that around this idea that something that we live with every day, gravity, light. For most of recorded history, the greatest scientific minds of their age did not know what light was. So we shouldn't be skeptical. We should always be keeping an open mind. So now let's come full circle and talk about what this has to do with X2O. Because it's very important, because if we thought of light as being a particle or wave, there's no actual way to store the light in water. But because it's a quantum object with special properties, that means we can invent technology to take advantage of those properties and trap the photon as a virtual mass inside of opposing water molecules. So we jump ahead to Dr. Luc Montagnier, who, interestingly enough, his laboratory contacted us in about 2019 or so, right after the launch of X39. They wanted to study it. And he's a Nobel Prize-winning scientist. And that's important because he's not an everyday run-of-the-mill doctor working in a lab. He was heavily criticized for his work in homeopathy because the standard medical institution doesn't want to recognize homeopathy. But he believed that he had a way of explaining this with quantum electrodynamics. Basically was homeopathy was going to trap information in coherent domains. So a quick lesson on homeopathy. What you do is let's say we're in allergy season right now, so let's say we have someone that's allergic to tree pollen. You can take the pollen, put it in water, you shake it, or success it. And that sends an impact through the water. You are imprinting the water with information. You dilute it, you keep diluting it, and eventually the information of the pollen ends up in the water, and this acts as a therapy for people that have allergies. So how is this actually working? How do you create coherent domains in water? We do it in X2O. First, we treat liquid water as an open system, meaning that water molecules are actually electromagnetic dipoles. We look at the structure of the water molecule, and it closely resembles an electromagnetic antenna, just like you would have for a radio or a radio wave or a cell phone. So that means liquid water is capable of interacting with electromagnetic fields. Under the right conditions, and this is the important part, the water molecules can line up where they can form coherent domains. What we do with X2O is we have a precise series of wavelengths of light that we use. If you were to open the machine, you see that they're oriented in a specific way at a specific distance with a specific condition between them. And this allows for the formation of coherent domains. When we expose water to light, the water molecules now line up and they begin to oscillate. And this oscillation traps a photon as an electromagnetic wave between two adjoining water molecules. Interestingly, in quantum electrodynamics, a photon can achieve a relative mass. Photons normally don't have any mass. That's why they can reach the speed of light. But in this example, the photon actually takes on a virtual mass, which allows it to be trapped. So this explains and answers a question people have. How long will the water remain stable? This is now easy to understand. If we heat the water, like try to make coffee out of it, we're adding energy into the system, so the water is going to break down, so it will last a shorter period of time. If we expose the water to other sources of light, like sunlight, it'll start to break down. If we keep the water in the dark and we reduce the temperature, now the water will stay stable longer. So under normal conditions, keep the water out of the dark, keep it cool, the water will stay stable for several hours, 3, 4, 5 hours. So we have this specific processing method that I invented that traps photons as electromagnetic oscillations between the dipoles of water. So this is what we call coherent domain. So what happens when we drink this water? That would be the best question. We have 6 clinical studies now. And the incredible part is that we show people respond within 15 seconds drinking the water when they're being measured. I've seen some testimonials going around where people are in front of infrared cameras, and about 1 or 2 minutes you actually see the body changing after drinking the water. In our studies, we had over 250 people, I think it was 280 people in those studies drink our water. 100% of the people had measurable changes within minutes of drinking it. We did urine testing. To me, this was one of the most exciting things that we've done. We've done tests to show how X2O improves the electrical potential of the cells, but the urine testing is so interesting because we actually see how the metabolism improves from drinking X2O. And we don't make this claim because we're doing more work on it, but we see a connection between drinking X2O and upregulation of the energy system in the cell. And that a claim that we make is that drinking X2O improves energy production, and we're just trying to see what that pathway is. on a very, very practical level, within minutes of drinking the water, this effect lasts 3 to 5 hours, and people report better energy for that time, improved cognition, better mental clarity. It's like almost like you're waking up, you have an expanded awareness. Circulation is improving, athletic performance improves. Because the benefits last for hours, we currently recommend that you shouldn't drink the water 4 or 5 hours before you want to go to sleep. Otherwise, it may keep you awake longer than you want to. So to sum this all up, X2O is going to improve your hydration, which is a very powerful health effect. We deliver an antioxidant through the water, which is hydrogen. Hydrogen is the most powerful antioxidant. The results are very quick. You don't have to wait around for weeks. Most people are going to experience benefits the first day. Supports bioelectrical effects in the body. One of the things that's closely associated with aging is a decrease in energy production and energy flow. That's all linked to mitochondrial function. So we're really excited about this because it provides one of the most basic benefits for all human beings. We recommend consuming Celergize morning with X2O. And that way X2O acts as a delivery system, getting those nutrients into the cell for enhanced benefits. And of course, all of our patches work better when the cells are properly hydrated. So X39, all of our patches, Celergize morning, X2O, they all go together into a single system. Okay. I'm glad I had my glass of X2O because that was a lot of information, and I hope people are taking a breath now.
Yes, that was incredible. I think, well, I know I speak for everyone when I say that we're so grateful for you. Not only that you have these ideas and pursue them, but that you have the patience. I mean, you just said over 10 years, and somehow you took this thing from like a 3-foot by 9-foot piece of equipment down to something that can sit on your countertop and benefit so many people every single day. So I find that all fascinating. I'm sure everyone who's watching does as well. Now, are you going to tell that whole story every time you talk to somebody about X2O? Probably not, but hopefully there were some sound bites in there and just some explanation that will help answer some of the questions that people may or may not ask. I think, that just depends on the person you're talking to. Everybody's so different. Sometimes people are like, yeah, just bring it. They're just interested in wellness and anything that can help them feel better and have that mental clarity and that energy and, have them feeling better as they age. And others will want to get into the science. So now you've got a resource for all of you watching to go back to. David, was there anything as you were going through all of this and inventing X2O, developing this technology, was there anything that you discovered through that process that surprised even you?
Oh, so many things. Yeah. First, I would say is that to put this in perspective, because I don't want to take credit for all of this, is that I invent through prayer. So I would describe, and this is something very common. I had this conversation with Dr. Norm Shealy. When he was alive, he was a very, very well-known medical doctor. He brought like modern pain management into the U.S. With TENS devices. And he said that Norm was actually a very good inventor himself. And he said to me, how do you invent? And I said, I'm not doing the inventing. I'm praying and I'm receiving a download and the information comes to me. So I don't really think of myself as an inventor. I'm just using information. And he said, most people that I've spoken to about inventing, they describe that same process. You get this flash of insight. And so this was definitely a series of steps that led to X2O. There was the flash of insight of if we could put light inside of the body, we could get effects that we can't get with the patches today. And if we could somehow, because water goes everywhere, if we could somehow trap light in water, then water would be the delivery system. It was like, how are we going to trap light inside of water? And if we trap light in, what wavelengths of light are we going to use anyway? So that was kind of like the genesis of it. And I think one of the things I was most surprised to find, which I shouldn't have been, was that biological systems are using very sophisticated codes of light. I was surprised at how sophisticated it was, and that it was linked to music. That these were the same ratios that we see in music. And thankfully, and I think this was divine, my father's a music teacher. So I learned music growing up. So I started to see these patterns and think of them that way. And that was a big step. But then several months later, finding the same code in the Holy Bible said to me, here's actually some proof that God exists, and that when God created all things, he signed his name in light in species that are immortal. And we can learn about this and apply this and create new technology. So it became terribly exciting as all of these things started to show up through the research.
Amazing. Obviously, this was a long journey, and one of the questions that we get fairly frequently from brand partners is, why did it take so long to bring it to market? I feel like you almost answer the question just in how you talk about everything. I mean, bringing something that's never been done before from an idea to market is probably a cajillion times more work than the average person who's never invented anything thinks it is. But what would you say was actually the biggest challenge in developing X2O and making it into a viable product that can in fact sit on someone's kitchen countertop?
Yeah, crazy frustrating. The first obstacle we have is we lost maybe a year in the beginning because we were working with an industrial design firm to turn the prototype into something on a desktop, and the engineering group we were working with were just not competent. They weren't up for the task, but they weren't willing to admit it. And so we lost a good 12 months there. The good news was that we found an outstanding company to work with, really talented engineers that gave us some good advice. The second thing was getting people on board with the concept. And many engineers, they have a very straight way of thinking, which is fine because that skill set is necessary, but they didn't understand the precision. They were like, okay, you're treating water with light like UV light so you can clean it. I was like, no, that is not what we're doing. It took a surprisingly long amount of time to communicate what it was that we were trying to do. And the problem is that showed up in the selection of different LEDs. The tolerances were not correct. The light panels themselves have to be tuned like a musical instrument to get the right effect. So we had a lot of errors that occurred there. Material selection, we had materials that the engineers were using that they didn't follow a document that we had, and that created problems. So we had, it was, I would say, a real spiritual battle in the sense that I think there was an underlying dark force that did not want us taking this to market. It was overly complicated, and I prayed over it. I kept thinking, okay, we're running into this is like a spiritual wall, and we need to keep pushing and pushing to get through, because I know out on the other side, we're going to help an enormous number of people. And so, of course, it was delayed and delayed, but thank God it finally got to market.
Well, I think, the very best things are worth waiting for. So I know that our brand partner community is incredibly grateful that you did push through all of that, had the patience to keep going, and that you're just so determined. I mean, you knew it just, you had to get through some barriers, and that's part of life, right? We see that every day.
I'll tell the story someday, but I was attacked on every possible level. And, it was physically traumatic for me. I had family problems that showed up that were so bizarre. I would say it that way. I was like, this is a spiritual attack. I feel it, but it's an opportunity for me to pray more, get closer to God, push away the dark forces, because we had seen early on these like miraculous effects with the water, with people that got some early prototypes. It's like, okay, I can totally see why the things are happening the way they are. I need to just keep pushing.
And that's tenacity, and that's what it takes to invent a new product. That's what it takes to build a company like this. That's what it takes for all of our brand partners to build their businesses every day. There's always going to be hurdles and obstacles that you have to get over, around, under, or through to get to what you really want. So super grateful that you hung in there. Okay, I want to ask you a question about kind of a buzzword in wellness right now, and that's biohacking. Do you view X2O as a biohacking device, or do you think it's something entirely different than that?
That's a really interesting way to put it. I think the term biohacking is fine, because it's, in a way, so essentially it's describing a way that we can tweak, modify our bodies to produce better effects, optimum effects. So in a way, I don't think there's anything wrong with describing this as a biohack. On the other hand, we should probably take the opportunity to look at this a little bit differently. And what I mean by that is, from my perspective, human beings at one time had the innate ability to live to be hundreds of years old. That shows up in the Bible, and the Bible is mathematically accurate, meaning that if we take a genealogy starting with Adam that's listed in the book of Genesis, anybody can do this. You can take ChatGPT, Grok, and have it do this analysis, but the ages shown from Adam forward in Genesis is a biological decay curve, meaning that those numbers are not there by accident. And there's no way for Moses to have known what a biological decay curve was back in the day.
Right.
So what that means is those ages are accurate and they're true. So if human beings once had the ability to live to be over 900 years old, the question is what changed? And more than likely, it's a corruption of the DNA, corruption of chromosomes or genes. And we most likely will be able to reset those genes. The process is through methylation and hypermethylation. So we should be able to reset the genes to a point where we get that ability back. So if we solve that problem, we make human beings more productive. We decrease costs on the healthcare system. We're improving quality of life for people. We dramatically reduce insurance costs. And now we can devote our time and our energies to improving the human condition. How do we help people that are in need? How do we help the homeless? We should not be dealing with this day and age. There shouldn't be war. There shouldn't be homelessness. There shouldn't be poverty, right? I know if I want to be around for 400 or 500 years, I want to live in a great, amazing world, a clean planet, and we should all be working together to do that, not fighting these stupid wars and not allowing people to live in poverty. So I think there's enormous benefit for humankind by creating technology like that.
I mean, imagine everyone watching this right now that you get to be part of something with that end goal, that mission in mind. I mean, I hope you have your mind blown a little listening to David talk that way about what we're doing here at LifeWave, because it's just it's so big and it's so important, and we get to be part of that. So again, thank you. I feel like you kind of just answered this, but I'm going to ask it a slightly different way. You answered it in sort of a roundabout way, but how much of wellness do you believe is really about creating the right environment for the body to do what it was already designed to do?
So maybe it's close to 100%.
That's what I would say.
Your statement envelops a lot of things. What that means is we create this foundation where we're eating as healthy as possible, we're exercising regularly, we're getting proper rest, we're hydrating, reduce the amount of alcohol that you drink, reduce the amount of caffeine, these kind of things, take vitamins where necessary. And the ultimate goal, reduce stress in your life, the ultimate goal is to get the cells to function like younger, healthier cells. If we can think about this on the cellular level and even deeper into the mitochondria, it all seems to come back to the mitochondria. That's what we understand today. So you take this little organelle, and if it can function like a 25-year-old mitochondria, the net impact of that is now you have the energy for tissue repair, you have the energy for your overall metabolism, you have the energy for detox, making hormones. And that information is communicated to the DNA, and gene expression changes accordingly. So Bruce Ames did some wonderful foundational research of this, showing that even something as simple as taking acetyl L-carnitine and alpha-lipoic acid can ramp up mitochondrial function and can get cells to start looking and acting like younger, healthier cells. And there's a number of ways of doing it. There's some advantages and disadvantages to each approach. So that's why we spend so much time looking at how can we just get the cells to burst with energy so they act like younger, healthier cells, because that's going to have an impact on every other single thing in the human body.
I love it. All right, we're coming up on the hour. I want to end on a lighter question.
Okay, no pun intended.
Yeah, no pun intended. This might be kind of like asking you to choose your favorite child, but you've invented some incredible things, and I know there's things that you are working on that we don't even know about yet. Where does X2O rank in terms of the innovations that you've been like personally the most excited about?
It is so it's so difficult. And keep in mind, I mean, I'm approaching, I think I'm up at 250 patents now. I don't know what we'll be at by the end of the year. And wow. I certainly, have my top 20 or 30 at this point. I've got hundreds of inventions all together. Some of them don't see the light of day. I invented a new type of blowtorch, for example. That's just a fun story.
We don't need to add that to the product portfolio.
No, but it was pretty cool. I would say first X39 has changed so many people's lives for the better. It changed this company in a remarkable way, and it opened up an entirely new door where we wouldn't be here without X39. So right. X39 is way, way up at the top of the list for that reason. X2O certainly has the potential to be more life-changing than X39. X39, the brilliance of it is that, and I'm not patting myself on the back, I don't want it to come out that way. The beauty of X39 is that it's inexpensive, and it can be, we can ship it anywhere on the planet, and virtually everyone can afford it. So that's part of the beauty of it. With X2O, it's way, way more complicated than that. Right. But the potential of it, for relative to its benefits, looks like they're limitless at this point. And X2O will give birth to some other technology. So that story unfolds. The technology that I've invented for our drones is life-changing in another way and gives birth to our home power generation unit, which will liberate people by giving them abundant, clean energy that's doing great for the planet and making them energy independent, earn money, build a business around it. So I'm really looking forward to bringing that out. And as you know, I have a technology that I've invented that at this point, I probably want to spend the next 5 to 10 years just on this one piece of tech because the potential is so massive. So this is I think in my inventing life, when I develop something like X2O, I think in terms of this feels like the pinnacle of my career now. And then God has another...
But you're not done yet.
No, I mean, I would tell you right now that invention that I shared with you, the new one that I'm developing in the lab, which is it's a little infant that was just born. I honestly feel I will never invent anything better than this. That's the way that I feel now. It's that I feel this like enormity for it. Because it can change the world in such a dramatic way. But right now, front and center with X2O, we want to make this available to as many people as possible because we've seen what it can do. So I think we want to have as many incentives as possible so people can win them, earn them, build a business around it, and that will be amazing.
That will be amazing. It is already amazing, and we're only in one market, and we've only launched 2 brand partners. So obviously this webinar is product focused. We spent all the time talking about the product and the product benefits, but there are absolutely, incredible potential business benefits with this as well. And I know our U.S. field is very excited about that, excited for us to launch to customers as well. And, I still think most people are going to start most conversations with X39 and then add in Sellergize and then add in X2O. But anytime we launch a new product is such a huge opportunity to talk to new people, to go back to people that, said no, or maybe later, several years ago or several months ago. So it just opens the door to, that many more new conversations about LifeWave and about what we're doing, which of course, then can benefit those people who are willing to listen from the product perspective, but also from the business perspective as they consider joining us on this incredible journey as well. So thank you again for spending an hour with us this month.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure to host this Product Connect, and we look forward to, future every month getting to get that insight into what's going on, the benefits, and just how you're thinking about the future. So really appreciate your time, David. Thank you.
Oh, you as well, Janine. Thank you. Always a pleasure.